Hey everybody, this is Chris with Overclockers Club. We've got two cases here from Fractal Design. We've got the Meshify 2 and we've got the Meshify 2 Lite. And of the two cases, the Meshify 2 here, this is going to be the higher end case, or the case with more features. And this is going to be more of the budget-minded case here, the Meshify 2 Lite. And I'll get both of these cases out and we'll look at them side by side, but first we'll look at the Meshify 2 Lite box and sort of go over the details, and then I'll get this one out. And like I said, we'll get the other one out side by side. So first of all, we're looking at the basic information, sort of what jumps out at me. It looks like we've got a decent amount of hard drive storage capability, 7 expansion slots. Okay, motherboard compatibility, we can go from a mini ITX all the way up to an eATX, which is an extended ATX. So that's a pretty good range of motherboards that it supports. Graphics card, we can go up to 451 millimeters with front fan. So we'll see what that means a little later. CPU cooler, we can go up to 185 millimeters on that. That's usually like an air cooler, how high it sticks up. Water compatibility, water cooling compatibility. We've got front up to 360, top up to 360, rear 120, bottom. So we can put one in the bottom, 240 or 280, RGB 240 millimeters. Like I said, we'll see what all this is when we get it open. We've got capacity for 3 120 or 140 front fans. We can get 3 120 or 140 top fans, 1 rear 120 or 140, and bottom we can put a couple of 120s or 140s. So there's a fair amount of space for fans. We got dust filters, and then there's your I/O panel. That's pretty standard. And again, some more specifications for this case. And like I said, all this information is available at the Fractal Design website. And before I get this flipped around here real quick, I'll show you the case dimensions for this case are 542, 240, 474, and on the Meshify 2, it's 542, 240, and 474. So it looks like these two cases, have the exact same physical dimensions. And let's see the information here. So we've got the angular mesh on the front right here, this front panel. And this is pretty standard here on the Meshify cases. I've looked at the Meshify S2 and I've looked at the Meshify Compact, reviewed both of those, and they both had that similar front angled mesh. So we've got up to eATX on the motherboard, so we already talked about that. That's good. Radiators up to 320 or 360 in the front, 240 in the base, 120 in the rear, included trays. So this is all of your hard drive capacity. Again, we'll see that in more detail when we get it open. And front panel with tether free bezel for easier access to fan mounts. I think that means that it comes out completely, but yeah, this whole thing looks like it pops out. So we'll get this one open now, and this one is out of the box. We'll get the plastic off there. There's actually plastic on the inside of the glass too. I'll have to get that out of there, but so far looks like a pretty nice case. One thing I forgot to mention is this is actually an RGB fan setup here. So those three are RGB, and I'm pretty sure the exhaust fan in the back there is also RGB. So we'll have to check that out when we get it powered up. Okay, so now we're over here looking at the Meshify 2 and looking at the specifications, or what I call features here. So we've got, looks like a similar drive capacity. Again, we'll get these side by side and confirm all that. Expansion slot 7+2. So the +2, we've got a couple extra slots, it looks like, on this case. Motherboard compatibility, we've got the same range from eATX all the way down here to the mini ITX. Power supply is the same. Graphics card, it looks like a little bit longer of a card is capable. Up to 185 on the length of your air cooler. So we got 360 up front, okay, so we go up to 420 on the top. So we've got a little different configuration here, the same on the rear and the bottom. Fan capacity, 140s up to 3 of those, up to 140s in the top, front, rear, and bottom. So it looks like our fan layout or our fan configuration is about the same. Fans included, we've got 2 dynamic GP14s. I think those are 140 millimeter RGB fans. Looks like they're RGB fans. Yep. Rear, we've got looks like a 120 millimeter, and the standard dust filters, and the I/O layout here looks a little different. We'll check that out. And again, the physical dimensions on this case and this case here are exactly the same. So let me get this box moved around to the back. And here are some slides that show you the specifications. All of this information is, of course, available at the Fractal Design website. So you can take a look at this, pause it, absorb it, whatever you want to do. Oh, teaser there. This is actually in white. So you can see that these cases come in more than one color. All right, so on the back of the case here, got the same angled mesh front that we have on the other Meshify series cases. Same type of EATX support for the motherboard. Talks about the radiators again. We can go up to a 420 in the top. That's really the big difference on this case compared to the other case. Looks like convert to storage layout for up to, so it looks like we've got some a wider array of options here for hard drive storage, improved chassis. So this one, the top of the chassis actually opens up, and I really like that on a system build. It makes things a lot easier when you're trying to get everything connected. And the other case here, this one, this is more of a solid chassis. And this one here, even though it's the same physical size, we've got this part here that opens up. And let's see, front panel with hinge removable mesh filter, tether-free bezel, same as the other case. 3 front USB ports, including USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C, with fast charging and speeds up to 10 gigabits a second. So I think this case here again has a few more bells and whistles. And there they are, both out of their boxes. Now I got the plastic peeled off of this one on the outside. I still have to get it off the inside. But to look at these two, and again, they have the same physical dimensions, so they have the same footprint. It looks like the same case, we just have a white version and a black version, but they are actually a little different. And if you notice there, the I/O panels are just slightly different. You can see we've got USB 3.0 on this side. There's your, let's see, it looks like a reset button. Sometimes that's like an RGB button. There's your power button. We've got a USB Type-C, and then our microphone and headphone jacks. And on this side, we've got USB 3.0. Again, these are often reset buttons, but sometimes they're buttons to toggle your Rgb effects. So we'll see that when we get it powered up. Power button, microphone, headphones, and then here we just have what appears to be a power indicator. Like I said, when we get it powered up, we can see. But even though they look like basically a black and white version of the same case, they are not. If we get the front panels open here, there we go. So you can see again, they do look pretty similar from the front. All right, looking from the back, this is the Meshify 2 on the left. This is the Meshify 2 Lite on the right. And I'll bring up a web page here later, and we'll look at the different color, the colors that are available. But right now, like I said, this one's in white, and this one's in black. But if we look at the back here, you can see the I/O opening here for the back of the motherboard is the same. Our fan configuration with the dual slots here, so you can do a 120 or a 140, and then you can move the fan up or down a little, is the same between the two. We've got our 7 slots, but this case here has 2 additional slots for the installation of a vertical GPU, whereas this side we just have a vented panel. And then your I/O bracket here on the both, it's the same between the two cases. And when we flip the cases over to show the bottom of the case, they're exactly the same. Filter panels are the same, the feet are the same, the whole bottom of the case is the same between the two, which is really what I expected. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get the case side open here. I love the way these open on these Fractal Design cases. They've got the little detents there, and we've got the little like a little ball, and they go into the little receivers there and sort of lock. They sort of click and lock in there. Anyway, I like the way that feels when the panel goes off and on. Okay, so what comes to mind here is the cable management. So we've got these little cable guides that are sort of keep your cables all in alignment. You got these Velcro straps here that you can draw down to keep all of your all your cables lined up. We've got some nice rubber grommets here. We've got 2 of the trays here for your solid state drives, your 2.5-inch drives. So they sort of slide down in there like that and then lock in. So we got 2 right here. Now we've got this multi-bracket here. Now this is actually for pumps if you're going to do a liquid cooled system, a custom loop. But this actually is removed from here and it goes on the inside, and I'll show that later. Up here is your fan hub, so all of your fans will plug in here, and then this goes back to, usually there's a SATA connector there that goes to your power supply to power the hub, and then the signal that tells all of the fans what to do. This connector here goes to the motherboard, so the motherboard signal will control all the fans. The other thing here, I like this plastic cover here, and it says pull, and let's see if this releases. Yeah, so this is nice because one of the things I see on a lot of cases, especially smaller cases, is when your main power cables and stuff, they get routed up through the back here, and they're turning and they want to stick out, and they're thick and they don't want to bend and they don't want to conform. So when you go to put the cover back on, your cover is being pushed and it doesn't want to go on very easily. And this cover here, you can see these tabs at the bottom. You engage the tabs and then you push the cover forward. Well, if you've got a bunch of stuff down here pushing out, from past experience with other cases, it can be a pain. So with this cover here, you go ahead and this sort of forces the cables to sort of conform, and now you don't have the issue with them trying to push out here at the bottom of your cover. So I like this. Plus it sort of covers things up, although from the back, being a metal side, you're not really going to see any of that anyway. But looking down here, so we've got a hard drive cage down here, and the trays come out. So these are for your 3.5-inch drives, or it has mounting holes for 2.5-inch drives. And let's see, that slides in there. And this whole assembly here, this can be removed. So if you don't want this down here, you want to use the space for something else, this can be removed. And I think I'll have to confirm here, usually these things can be slid a little to the left or the right. But if you wanted to put, for example, a radiator down at the bottom, you'd have to get rid of this hard drive cage. At least a 240 or anything over 120. You might have room for one there, but usually with the cables coming off your power supply, things down here get pretty tight pretty fast. This bracket here, let me talk about that. And along with this bracket, this case here, and I didn't show it earlier, but this case actually comes with an accessory kit here. And again, keep in mind, this is the upper level of the 2 cases we're looking at. So this one is going to have more, you know, features, bells and whistles, all that stuff. So inside of this are the little hard drive trays. I'll show you. Okay, so it actually comes with Meshify 2. So it actually comes with an extra user guide here. But inside you can see it has 4 little trays for hard drives, and that'll handle 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch. And then here's the hardware kit, and I'll look at this here in more detail in a little bit. But anyway, so this comes with this case, and what that allows you to do is basically, and I'm going to have to configure this, but flip her around here. So this area here inside the case, let me just go ahead and take the glass off so we don't have all the glare, but that is where your hard drives would go if you have a lot of 3.5-inch hard drives. Now that used to be the trend years ago. Your cases in this area always pack this area full of mounting hardware for your 3.5-inch drives. And then at the top, you used to see your optical drives, 1 or 2 or sometimes more optical drives. Well, optical drives are pretty much dead. You won't find many cases anymore that have provisions for that. And we're opening all this space up in these cases, mostly for airflow, because the less you have going on in here, the better chances are the air is going to make a straight path from the front of your case to the back, or from the front out the top. And your cooling function is going to be a lot better. And like I said, most people nowadays don't really pack their cases full of the old 3.5-inch hard drives like they used to, but you could use this as a small server, in which case you might want to pack that with hard drives. But the manual here, I'm always impressed with the Fractal Design manuals, because they're very clear, and I like the way in their illustrations, so it sort of shows you the case overview at the beginning, but each example here, what's going on, what they're trying to show you, is in blue. So when you look at this, this is an example of a water reservoir build, so you can see how that configuration would be. And on the back shows you places where hard drives can go. Server build example. Okay, so right there. So over here in this area is where you would pack it full of hard drives, and it shows you all the different places you can locate hard drives. Then there's a section called the Builder's Guide, and it walks you through basically building the system. So if you've never built a system before, this will walk you through step by step everything you need to get your system going. And this is good here. You know, a lot of times if you've never built a system, you're not sure exactly where all the cables go, and it's important to get those things plugged into the right location. So this pretty clearly walks you through the process. Shows you how to install all your hard drives. Take the top panel off, and then we get into more details for your hard drive cage locations. Then we get into somewhere in here, usually there's a place for all of your different radiator. Okay, here's your custom water-cooled loop. There's the multi-bracket there again, mounted up here in the front if you're going to put your reservoir there. So really nice manual. I've always been impressed, again, with the level of detail on these. Anyway, good to know. Oh, wait, here it is in the back. This is what I was going to show you. People often ask about fan locations and radiator placement, and there you go. So this shows you all the possible locations for your radiators. And somewhere there's usually fans also, because not everybody does liquid cooling. There you go. Radiators on the right, fans on the left. And an important piece, I'm going to try and show the vertical GPU mounting in this case. Well, you have to have one of these. This is your PCIe remote cable. So this allows you to plug one end into your PCIe slot on your motherboard, and the other end sits down here roughly in this location, and this is where your graphics card would plug in the vertical orientation, but we'll try to show that here in a little bit. Now, one of my favorite things about Fractal cases, and not all of them do this, but this one does, you pop the top off here very easily. Again, it has the same little ball detents, or little, I guess, ball and socket to hold the cover on. So this comes off very easily because you will need to blow this out from time to time from dust that collects in the mesh. So here's your filter panel. All you do is just sort of pull back like that a little bit, and then the whole panel comes out. It's best to do that when your system's not running, because any dust you stir up, you don't want to suck it back into your case. So this to me is really nice. This is really cool. You take a couple screws out here, and this entire top bracket lifts out. And when you're doing a system build, the more access you have to all of the components, the easier it is. So this bracket here comes out, and this is where you would mount fans or your radiator. So you can sort of do that ahead of time and set this in there, or you can get it out of the way. But now the whole top of your case is opened up. When you're plugging cables into your motherboard, it just makes the build so much nicer. Great feature. And again, not all the Fractal cases have that, but to me, the ones that do, if they cost a little more, it is well worth it. Now, usually you're not in and out of a case very often, you know, once you build your system. Typically, if there's an upgrade here or there, you might get back in, but for the most part, once you build it, you're done. Now, something I want to point out, if you'll notice, the radiator area here for the radiator and fans, it's offset here towards the glass panel side of the case. It's away from the motherboard. So all this here is basically clearance. And the reason they do that, if you look in here, it's pretty shallow right here. And your motherboard's going to sit right in here. There's not a lot of room for a radiator and fans. In fact, if they were back here directly above the motherboard, you would be hitting your motherboard. So what they do to compensate for that is they shift everything to the right. So that gives you a slightly wider case maybe than what you would have otherwise. But that allows you to have a radiator and fans together on top and not get into the way of your motherboard. Now the back fan and the front fans are the same way, but the back fan here, you'll notice we got some connectors here. And if you're not familiar with it, you're basically going to have two things going on with an RGB fan. You're going to have a connector for the fan itself. This powers the fan. This is a 4-pin PWM, but it actually has a male and female, so I can connect an additional fan right off of this lead if I wanted to. But you've also got a second set of wiring here, and this is for the RGB effects. And you'll notice this is a 3-pin, it's a 4-pin connector, but one of the pins is blocked off. And this is what will connect. You'll daisy chain this together with your other fans, and then ultimately it goes back to your motherboard, and your motherboard will be controlling the RGB effects. And I'll talk about this in a little more detail too, but it's important to connect these the right way, because the voltage difference between an RGB fan and like an RGB strip you might buy can be different. And you got to make sure you get the right connectors plugged into the right place. All right, now I'll show you how the front comes off. Now on a brand new case, things can be a little stiff, so they don't want to just come off, and it feels like you're going to break it if you yank on something too hard. So a lot of times there's a fine line between something just being stiff because it's new and it's not supposed to come off that way, and you hear a crack and a snap and little pieces come off that aren't supposed to. But anyway, so at the bottom here, here's your bottom dust filter. Actually, let me get the camera down there so you can see. There's the bottom dust filter. So you reach under there and pull it out. And again, you want to do this usually when the case is off so you don't stir all the dust up and then it gets sucked in there when your case fans are running. But there's the bottom filter, mesh filter. And then this whole fascia comes right off. But what I want to show you is the front door actually comes off too. And this is one of those things that feels like it wants to break, but you just sort of give it a quick pull and the door does come off. And these are your hinges right here, and they go into the little receivers there. So this is your front mesh panel, and this piece slides out of there. So you can clean both of these if you need to. Again, dust will accumulate. Like I always say, you want to do all this when the case or when your system's shut off, otherwise all that dust you just stirred up is going to get sucked right into your case. So this gives you better access to the front, but we can go a step further, and when you put your fingers under the bottom here, let me scoot this down a little bit, put your fingers under the bottom and you just sort of pull, and then it sort of wants to tilt. Now you've got some plastic tabs up here at the top. You want to be a little bit careful. Go back up here again. When you tilt this out from the bottom, you pull it out from the bottom, it sort of pivots at the top. Just be real careful again, because there are some little plastic tabs up here at the top. There's one, sort of one right here. If you get a little carried away or aggressive, you might snap these off. So again, you just want to be careful. So here's where you can access the front. So if you're doing your system build and you need to get in here to take these fans out, to put your radiator in, or put different fans, whatever, this is how you would access all that. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. This looks to be a light that's probably a power light. There's an LED, I think, back there. We'll see when we get everything powered up. The other case has that same provision. But what you do again is you sort of do it in reverse order. You want to sort of watch the top, make sure those little tabs go where they're supposed to go. And then you, let's see if I can do this right. There we go. Top snaps in, and then you rock it in, and you'll feel it when all of the tabs are locked in. And then we'll put the front back on again. We just line these up and sort of push it in. Yeah. You actually have to turn it just a little bit, partially close it. You don't want to go 90 degrees because it doesn't want to go in there. There we go. And we can close that, and then we'll go ahead down here and slide the filter in just like that. So filter panel management on this case is really pretty easy. Now when I do the system build, I've got a Fractal power supply to go in here, and I've got a Fractal liquid cooler, an S36, and I think I'll go ahead and put that in the top. So I'll leave the fan configuration just the way it is, and we'll put the radiator in the top. And before I get the system build going, I think I'll go ahead and take the hard drive cage out. So you need to get the bottom filter out. Now this is the bottom of the case here. I went ahead and tipped it up. And then I put the filter panel back, flip the case over, and this actually, there may be more than one way to get it out, but if you take your power supply bracket off, it just slides right out the back. So there's the cage. You can see it has two trays. And both of those out. Now one of them here has the hardware kit for the case. But I'm going to remove this entire panel, and there are two screws. I think there are two screws. There's one here at the bottom, and there's one on top. And I think what might be holding it in, the plastic pieces here in the front. And I already popped them loose from underneath. But these, there we go, one and two. So you can see those come out. Actually, I probably should have left that very top screw in, because this thing might go flying when I get the last screw out here. Let's see. That looks like it's holding on there. Almost. Is there one more that I'm missing? Oh, one more at the top. Okay. And I guess that makes sense. You really need to secure that so it doesn't move around. So we'll get the last screw out, and there it goes. Okay, yeah, I should have left that top screw in, and wouldn't have fallen out. Okay, so I got this. This is really a back plane here for all of your hard drives, and this little cover here is on there. So when it's in the case, it looks like that, and it looks real nice. But this is just for aesthetics. It looks better than the open bracket there. But what you can do, so when it's in the case like this with the cover on it, and when you flip it around to this side, everything looks nice. But basically this comes out, and you can transfer it over to the other side. So it goes in there. Let's see, the one side here is beveled, and that goes to match the bevel down here at the bottom. So this actually kind of goes in here like it sits in there. I just actually had it a moment ago. Let's see. There we go. Oop, almost. Yeah, goes in there like that, and then there's a screw that secures it at the top. And then there are the three screws that I took out. We have three more holes here, here, and here, and you have to pop the bezel off. But you secure this piece in there like that. There's a screw that goes in at the top. So it's really just mirroring it over to the other side if you're going to be using a lot of hard drives. And there we go. The way all of these trays go in, now remember it has 4 in the accessory kit plus 2 that I sort of borrowed from the hard drive cage at the bottom, but these have a little tab that's bent and then a straight tab, and then there's a hole for a screw. And these go in the back of the case, and they kind of lock in like that. So there's one, and then the screw over here secures along this face right here. So I'll just put one in down here in the middle, just so you can kind of see. So this would mount in there like that, and then this secures on here. Let's see if I can get it in there. Yeah, like that. And you can fill this all up, or if you only need to use one or two or however many. So that sort of gives you the idea. And then this area here is all open again. It's good for airflow. It's good if you're going to put a large radiator in the front. You can use all of the space, and you need basically you need some space behind the radiator for your fan clearance. And again, you've got plenty of space here for the air to be pushed through the case. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pop this out because I'm not going to be building this as a server. So we'll set all of this off to the side. This is going to be much more of a just a standard daily driver build. So I'll set those off to the side. And I think I'll go ahead and get the power supply installed first. So we'll go ahead and get that down here at the bottom. Now this is the Ion Plus 2 Platinum 860 watt power supply, fully modular. I've already reviewed this. This is a very nice power supply. This is pretty much my go-to test system power supply. Now when you put your power supply in, you always sort of want to think about it before you put it in. It's a lot easier to get these plugs connected when your power supply is out here than when it's inside, because it can be really difficult, especially if you have large hands, to get in there and get these things plugged in. So it's not the end of the world if you have to get in there and swap something out, but if you can sort of plan out what you need ahead of time, it will make things go a lot easier. Now if you have a power supply that is not modular, well then you don't really have a choice. And then the other thing you need to think about is, do you want to install it with the fan up or the fan facing down like that? Performance wise, it doesn't really matter, but some people, you know, if you've got some fancy graphics or something on the power supply you want to show off, of course, with the shroud here on there, you really can't show your power supply off, so it really doesn't matter. But just keep in mind, if you do put your power supply with the fan up, you've got to be careful you don't drop anything down into the power supply. And if you do, especially when you're building your system, you want to make sure you stop what you're doing and get it out of there immediately. And I'll get these screws tightened. And some people like to attach the bracket here to the power supply first before you slide it in. It doesn't really matter. I've done it both ways, and no big deal either way. All right, so we've got the power supply in. Next, I'll get the motherboard in. We'll get all these cables and fan connectors and all that stuff connected, and then I got to get the cooler in there in the top. All right, I have the motherboard just sort of sitting in there with one screw holding it in at the moment. I'll get that all installed, but this is a good time to go over the hardware kit real quick here. So inside the box, you get a little Fractal Design cleaning cloth for your glass side panel, a bunch of little cable ties, some screws for the power supply, an extra stud for motherboard installation if you need one, motherboard screws, and a ton of grommets, shoulder screws, and hard drive screws. This is if you're going to use the functionality there of the multi-level hard drive bracket. So you need something, you need the hardware to install all the brackets. And then they give you this little tool here. This is to install your hex standoffs and move them around based on whatever motherboard form factor you have. And earlier I showed how this bracket comes out. I already took the two screws out, but you take this out and it makes access up here during the system build so much nicer, particularly when you're putting in your main power cable or cables up here to the connector on your motherboard, and most motherboards have them in the same relative position, so this just makes it a lot easier. And you want to do this before you get your cooler installed, especially if you're using an air cooler, because big air cooler right here really makes it tough to get up to that area. Now let's see, do I have another? That's for the graphics card. I was thinking there was another. Here we go, another CPU cable. All right, so let me get this fished around the back, and then we can get it installed up top here. And again, even with this open, it's still a little tricky, so you can imagine what it's like if you don't have a case where the top comes off like that. There we go. So again, just makes it so much easier. And real quick, I want to point out, so this is the cable connector that comes from the case. This is what connects your USB Type-C socket on the top of your case to the motherboard. And all motherboards use the same connector here, and all case manufacturers use the same cable. And it looks like it's symmetrical, and I don't know why they do this. It looks so close to being symmetrical, it would be easy to try to push this in the wrong way, and you really can't. It only goes in one way. Well, I should say, if you force it, it will go in the wrong way, and you don't want to do that. So you really need to examine the connector and examine the end of your cable and make sure that it goes in the proper way. And you'll hear it give a nice firm click when it goes in, and it's in there properly. All right, time for the Fractal Design Celsius S36, and we're going to be putting that up here in the top of the case. All right, so I got to finish getting all the screws in there to secure the radiator, but it fits nicely, and it looks like these hoses are being pulled a little tight, but actually they're not. They're I couldn't really go too much further, but they're actually just fine the way they are. And another thing I really like about this Celsius S36, it has the fan connectors built in. There's a hub built in right to the radiator, and then the power goes to the pump through this hose. It's inside the sheathing here, so it really cuts down on the cable clutter. And then I'll get the fans installed, and again, the fans will just go right here to the hub instead of having to be routed somewhere on the motherboard. Now, the S36 also comes in a more of an updated RGB version, so you've got some RGB effects on it, but this is an older version, so it does not have any of that. All right, so everything is connected. It's kind of a mess here. I've got to get these cables kind of tucked away a little better, but these are the RGB connectors for the RGB effects and the fans, and they're daisy chained together. So we have the back fan connector that goes up through here, through this grommet into the motherboard, and then the other side of that daisy chain runs back over and connects to the other three fans. So that's how you do that. And the Nexus fan hub here, if you look at it, we've got 3 4-pin connectors here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 3-pin connectors there. So we can connect 3-pin fans here, and 4-pin fans do not really connect to these. It's not really, there's not enough room between them to hook them up. So you really need to just use 3-pin fans there. So again, we're daisy chaining the 3 front fans together, running off of one connector, and then the back fan comes in here. And then we've got a connector here. This is your SATA power that sort of powers the whole hub. And then there's one, actually this here is the, let's see which is which. Yeah, this is the connector here. This goes, it says PWM cable. This goes to the motherboard, one of your fan headers. So the fan signal comes in, and that's what controls your Nexus fan hub here as far as fan speeds for all the fans that are connected to it. So I'm going to go ahead and just power it up here in a moment. I need to get the graphics card installed, so let's do that now. So the graphics card I'll be using is a nice RTX 3070 Ti from NVIDIA. Thanks to NVIDIA for supplying that. And looking inside the case here now, since we're going to use the vertical GPU mount, there's a hole right there, and there's a hole right there, and we'll be using those for this PCIe remote mount cable. And that is called the Flex VRC25. Other suppliers, other manufacturers make cables like it, but this is the one that I've been using. And it comes with a couple studs, so you need to install the studs into these holes here. And the studs are installed. The little adapter here is secured with the 2 included screws. And then you plug the other end into your PCIe slot. And now I'm ready to get the block off covers here out of the way, and then we can get the graphics card installed. And there's the card. Now you do have to take this guy off completely. It does slide up a little, but there's not enough clearance to really get the card in there. And you have to sort of wiggle the card a little bit to get it in there. You got to make sure you get these front tabs on the card into those little slots, into the pocket just right, so that it drops down. So again, it takes a little bit of wiggling, but you can get it in there. And it is all powered up. This really looks nice. I've got the glass side off here so we can see what's going on the inside. So we've got the 3070 Ti graphics card mounted vertically. It's nice and firm. It's not wobbly or anything, especially when you get your fasteners all locked in there. The card's not going anywhere. And we've got 128 gigabytes of RAM from Neo Forza. We've got a 12700KF CPU. This is the MSI Tomahawk DDR4 motherboard. It's a Z690 chipset. And I can tell you there's a lot of air moving through here. Now the fans are cranked up. I've got to get in there and do some fan tuning, but I can feel a lot of air moving through there. And like I suspected, the this little cover here, when it's installed, it goes a long way towards keeping all of your cables out of the way when you go to put the cover on. So let me get this pushed on there. So when you go to put the cover on, it just goes on so nice, and you're not fighting cables that are pushing out at the bottom and you can't get it lined up or connected. And the other thing, so you see the little LED strip right here, and the button at the top controls that little strip, so you can go through the different effects there when you push the button. And there are several effects. In fact, they're listed in the manual. You've got solid colors, and then you've got effects that change. Like that one there. Yeah, that one's sort of a rainbow effect. Now the fan noise with the fans cranked all the way up, and these are 1700 RPM fans when they're running at the max. I mean, yeah, you can hear them, but I would expect that you would hear them when they are cranked all the way up. But the amount of airflow, and I like the way they did this front cover here, it really seems to not have a lot of restriction, and I can feel a lot of air coming out the back here, even through these PCIe slots. There's a fair amount of air coming through those, so that tells me that front fans are moving a lot of air into the case. And I don't feel quite as much coming out the top, but then again, we've got that filter panel underneath there. That can tend to be a little restrictive. All right, so I pulled the lights down so you can see what it looks like without quite as much glare on the glass. But definitely a really nice looking case. I really like this color, the all white. So again, here we are with the Rgb Effects running. Now, the Rgb Effects here are controlled by the motherboard, since the Rgb connectors all go into the lead on the motherboard. So if you want to get in and control the effects, you need to do that through the motherboard and the motherboard software. But this is a nice looking case. All right, and we are on to the next case. This is the Meshify 2 Lite. Since it is so similar to the case we just looked at, I'm not going to spend quite as much time on it, but the things to point out are the whole idea here is to come in at a lower price point, so we don't have quite as many of the features and the frills and the fancy stuff, but the basic chassis, the layout is essentially the same. The first thing I notice here is the back plane is one solid piece of sheet metal. This section is not removable. It does not come out. It's one big piece. And the other thing I noticed right away is the top does not pop off. The top is riveted to the rest of the chassis. You can take the filter panel off here, and it has a nice perimeter magnet. So it comes off, you can gain access to the top there for your fan or radiator installation, but the top is fixed. Looking at the back, again, we pointed this out earlier, we don't have any provisions for vertical GPU. It's just a vented section. The power supply bracket is the same. We've got the same 7 slots here for your PCIe expansion. Over here, the fan, again, now we've got the slots here to adjust the fan up or down, or you can use a 120 or a 140 millimeter fan. Looking at the front, it also looks essentially the same, but what we don't have is the dust panel. We don't have the separate dust filter in there, but the door itself essentially installs and mounts the same, and I'll pull this fascia off here in just a moment. I guess I could point out, yeah, the top doesn't have the removable filter panel other than this piece here too. So we've removed 2 of the filters. Let's see, is there one in the front? Yes, there actually is a bottom filter, so this is the same as the other case. So that is the same. Now if we come over here and pop the side off, it comes off the same way as the other one. And the first thing that jumps out here is we don't have that little cover to sort of keep the cables in there like we do, or like we did on the other case. So we don't have that. Let's see, the back of the motherboard tray looks very similar. This is again fixed. It is not removable. We've got the same hard drive cage down here, and looks like it is also removable, just like the other case. The other thing, let's see, on the front, on the inside, yeah, we've got these 2 plastic pieces here, so these both come out, and that's to facilitate a front-mounted radiator. You got to have some room for your fans. We do have 2 grommeted access holes here, but the top we don't have any grommets where we did on the other case, so they save a little money there too. Again, those things aren't really a big deal. And the other thing, and I pointed this out earlier, but the other thing, we don't have a USB Type-C socket up here. We just have a couple of USB 3.0 ports on the top. All right, we've got the system powered up. I need to get my cables straightened up a little more there. The other thing I didn't point out is you'll notice there's no Nexus fan hub. Your fans just go directly to the motherboard, but the RGB effects are very similar to what we saw with the first case. So we've got RGB in the front and the rear, and again, these all connect to the motherboard, so you control the effects through the motherboard and the motherboard software. So I'll get the panels on there and we can see what's going on. And there's the Celsius S36 mounted to the top, and again, you notice the radiator is offset there to the left to allow clearance for the motherboard. That allows the overall height of the case to be a little lower, and we don't have the interference of fans getting into the motherboard. Now I'm going to go turn the lights out. There we go. There's just so much glare on the glass. I love the glass, but boy, it really has a lot of reflection in it. But anyway, you can see the RGB effects there. They look pretty nice. And you know, I don't really miss the vertical graphics card. I like it, but you know, the graphics card in the standard orientation there really doesn't look bad at all. Let's come around to the front, and there you can see the case, lighting effects, and we have this little bar just like we did on the other case, and there's a little button, let's see, right up here somewhere. Yeah, you push that and you can change the lighting effects. There we go. There we go, solid. Okay, I just didn't hold it long enough. Push it again. There we go. Now you can cycle through colors. So that pretty much wraps it up. Which one do I like better? Personally, I like this one. I like it in all white, plus I like the extra features and functionality. Now, the cost difference between the two, this one with no RGB comes in around $129.99. With the RGB, it goes up to $144.99, as you see it right here. And this one is about $174.99. Really, for me, I would give both of these cases really the editor's choice. I think they both hit the sweet spot and fill in that niche for a good case with lots of airflow, lots of features and functionality. But for me, this one even hits the sweet spot more. And I was really impressed with the airflow through the case. I mean, there's really a straight shot from behind the fans all the way to the back. there's really not much there impeding the flow, so your airflow is really good. So this is Chris with Overclockers Club. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.